All right. What's up, everybody? And welcome to another episode of The Hidden Path with Carbon Mike. I'm your host, Carl, of Your Smart Ass Carl. We got the man of the hour, Mr. Carbon Mike, and we're doing something a little different here today. You guys can actually see me live. Let's get rid of this overlay. Let's see how we do that. Yeah, there we go. You guys can actually see me live on video. Doing this broadcast, you're gonna see me throughout the entire broadcast. So stop by and say hey. We got some topics, some hot topics, nothing specific, but just some hot topics that's on both me and Carmen's mind. But without further ado, let me go ahead and toss it to the man of the hour, Mr. Carbon Mike. How you doing, man?
I'm good, man. See, you were the man of the hour. You were the man of the hour, and I'm just glad to be here. It's so good to be back with you after your long absence. It's like I'm just pleased as punch. This is great. This is great. Only thing is missing is my video.
Yeah, unfortunately, the UK, which is a bummer, but it is what it is.
They ain't doing that. It is what it is. Yeah, so that's all right. I got a great space for radio, so we're all good.
Yeah.
Yeah, bro. So let's see. Yeah, a lot of stuff has been happening. I think what I want to touch on first, since tomorrow is another primary Tuesday, I want to talk about ROTC. And when you hear me say ROTC, you might think I'm talking about the Reserve Officer Training Corps, the U.S. Army, and possibly other services, No, ROTC is the rise of the crazies. It's progressives and democratic socialists starting to kind of, make noise in different primary races nationwide. And I think it's fascinating. It looks, I definitely wanted to chop it up a little bit about what this means. Is there really a war for the future of the Democratic Party, or are the mainstream Democrats just mad that the socialists, are saying the quiet part out loud too soon? The thing, it's like, we can talk about that. But I can tell you that, let's see. What do we got? Well, yeah, so Socialist on Loop. A gentleman named Abdul El Said in Michigan won his primary race against Haley. I forgot what her first name is. No, Haley Stevens. That's right. Haley Stevens. Stevens is the last name. Haley Stevens. So Haley Stevens is a Democrat. Abdul El Said is like a super lefty Democrat, and he won his primary. I think he's the one, if I'm not mistaken, was he the one who was backed by this online rando named Hassan Piker? You can tell me if that's true or not, but I remember seeing his name, I think, in conjunction with Said's. Francesca Hong is going to, that primary is Wisconsin's primary is tomorrow. And there we have a lady named Francesca Hong, who's running against a Milwaukee County executive named David Crowley. And that's the governor's seat. The primary in Michigan was for a Senate seat, but in Wisconsin they're going for the governor's race. I don't know too much about David Crowley. In fact, nothing at all. but I've heard Francesca Hong in a couple of interviews, and I don't know how to put this, Carl. She's radically dumb. She's just really dumb. Oh God. So, in Minnesota, there's a primary for the governor's race there. I mean, imagine, they're running to replace tampon Tim Walz. And here we have, I guess, a more mainstream Democrat named Angie Craig versus Lieutenant Governor Peggy Flanagan, who is that Peggy Flanagan's theme music, because I like it. That's it. Yeah, Peggy Flanagan is supposedly backed by the progressive wing of the Democratic Party, whatever that means. Mike Lindell, interestingly enough, is going to be running as a Republican in that race. But tomorrow, these two Democrats are running against each other. So it appears that lefties against lefties. I mean, I don't know much about Angie Craig, but Peggy Flanagan was Tim Walz's lieutenant governor. Tim Walz's lieutenant governor, which should tell you a lot. Yeah, Rise of the Crazies. And then there's some stuff going on in Connecticut and Vermont. I think the current governor of Connecticut is named Vermont, and he's being primaried from the left by a state rep named Josh Elliott. And in Vermont, there's two Democrats looking to replace Phil Scott, who was also governor of Vermont, Ali Richards and Amanda Janu. I wasn't able to find anything about Maine, but there's some strange stuff going on in Maine, right? It's like Democrats got the fever. A little while ago, Democrats really got the fever to win in Maine, and so they decided to line up behind someone who turned out to have, not such a stellar character. And I guess they're looking for a replacement unless they found one for Graham Platter. So yeah, that's the first thing I have on my list is Rise of the Crazies.
So
what do you think about these crazies, Carl?
So you got a bunch of socialists running across the country in different races, different key races. You mentioned the first guy, Mr. Abdul El Said. If I'm pronouncing that, wrong, forgive me. It is what it is. Yeah. The Democrat Party is trying to do an about face when it comes to things they've said over the last 4 or 5 years, and now they're leaning full-fledged into socialism. You can see it this in Michigan. You see it in other races across the country. Now, we've known this as conservatives for years. We've been saying it for a long time that these people are going to try to take office. That they're going to be running in key races across the country. They're going to be running in for important offices around the country, and a lot of people ignored it. Here's the thing: just like there was a political movement within the conservative Republican Party with the MAGA movement, you're seeing the same thing with the Democrats with the socialist movement, in my opinion. And while
what's
your question?
Oh, so I didn't mean to interrupt you. I was going to say, do you think that there's the same? I mean, a lot is being made in the news of mainstream Democrats coming out against the kind of these socialist upstarts. Do you think that's for real, or you think mainstream Democrats are just fine with it? What's your thought on that?
I think Wall Street Democrats hate this. So like your Hillary Clinton types, they hate this. But
Right.
like people like, and we're gonna get into her a little later, but people like AOC and people who are what is considered the new wave of the Democrat Party, they're absolutely in love with this. They love, people like your boy Mandani, Zoran Mandani. They love people
Well,
like
your boy.
that.
That's your boy.
So it's just one of those
One of
things
my
of
friends.
like how I see it
Yeah.
is like Wall Street Democrats, the establishment Democrats, whatever you want to call them, they absolutely hate this. People who are part of that old guard who's been around since like the 70s, 80s, they absolutely hate the fact that, you know, socialists around the country is running because, their biggest donors are millionaires and billionaires who don't want to be taxed. And you
That's
got
right.
people like Mandani and this new guy Abdul. I forget
Abdul Saeed.
all the others, but
Al
all the
Saeed.
others are
Yeah.
talking about taxing the rich and eating the rich and all this other stuff. And and they're extremely anti-Israel. Let's not forget about that. So if you got these type of people that are running, and most of your donors on the Democrat Party, your big time donors support Israel or have companies that
You have a
support
lot of money.
Israel's. Yeah.
Mhm.
So you're not going to necessarily be happy with who is representing the party right now. But the voters seem to like it.
But you know,
They're electing them.
well, I mean, you keep saying the voters seem to like it. I have no such evidence in New York in any case, right? Half the eligible voters in New York turned out, half, and Mamdani won like 45% of that half. So no, it's like the problem is that people with sense are staying home. Voters with sense are staying home because they're disgusted and there's no one else to vote for. But I would say this: I think you're right about the mainstream, the Wall Street Democrats hating these socialists. But what's interesting, I want to run this by you. I think, I mean, okay, so like Hillary Clinton, for example. I mean, Hillary Clinton doesn't really have any principles to speak of, right? So I don't think her opposition and the opposition of other Wall Street Democrats to these socialists, I don't think it's a principled opposition. I think they hate these guys because they know that a lot of what these guys are saying and are willing to say on a hot mic is very unpopular, and they're simply worried that they're going to endanger the chances of the Democratic. In other words, I think that they're worried these guys are polluting the brand of the Democratic Party. It's not that. You know what I'm saying? I don't think that Wall Street Democrats are any less statist than any other socialists. Because the socialists are all statists. They're all really in favor of lots and lots and lots and lots of government. And I think, the Hillary Clintons of the world are as well. It's just that, I think she just thinks these guys are screwing up the game, right? Like they have a long game planned and these guys are jumping the gun. What do you think about that?
No, I can get down with that. I can see how that it's messing up their game plan. So I can get down with that.
Yeah. Sure. Sure. After all, it's not like the Hillary Clintons of the world have no problem disarming us all and all the other stuff that socialists know and putting more things under government control. Provided their donors have their way. And look, when countries start to turn socialist, the big money, the gigantic interests very often have their way regardless. Like the very large concentrations of capital are going to find ways to protect themselves. It's going to be, depending on the economy, the middle class, the working class, those are the people who are going to get squeezed. And as you and I agree, the mainstream Democratic Party doesn't really care about that demographic. It doesn't really care about working people. It definitely doesn't care about blue collar Americans. So I think they're just worried that people like Francesca Hong, who like Mamdani has backtracked on the whole thing of defunding the police. Um, yeah, she's just jumping the gun. It's like there's people like Hillary Clinton think, well, there's a way to go about these things. This isn't it.
Yeah, that's a structural way they go about doing things.
That's right.
It's the same thing that, like, I'm not trying to compare the two movements because they're vastly different.
Mm-hmm.
But, you look at
Mm-hmm.
the MAGA movement in 2016
Mm-hmm.
when Trump was first
Mm-hmm.
running for president, was first running for president.
Mm-hmm.
The establishment, the Republican establishment, was basically was telling him and the movement, like, you can't do it this way.
Mm-hmm.
You have to. There's certain dues
Right.
you have to pay before you can take over the Republican Party, if you will. There's certain things you have to establish first before you can be the representation of the party. And Trump basically kicked down those doors and said, no, we're not doing it that way. Drain the swamp was a famous quote. Oh God, I triggered my Siri. Anyways,
what was the quote again?
What was the quote again? The drain the swamp. Trump said he wanted to drain the swamp, kick down what that read to me was kick out all the establishment Republicans who are not doing anything for this country to move this country forward. And
right. I mean, I think that's right. I mean, I think in some ways, the establishment Democrats, the establishment Republicans have a lot in except that the establishment Republicans just really kind of don't want to do anything. And we never don't want to do anything because they don't do anything. You know what I'm saying? It's like, and they don't want to fight, right? And they certainly don't want to win. That is win new territory. They're perfectly happy to hold on to power in places where they're already in power, but they're not really. They're not. There was no, even concept of something like a conservative revolution with the people who were already in office with the Republican conservatives when Trump took office. I mean, the last time there was anything like that was when Ronald Reagan became president, and I would argue that even he really didn't. That wasn't really a conservative revolution. Like Ronald Reagan, for all the people, kids that was room, he didn't really make meaningful steps towards the federal government. I mean, that seems obvious. But on the other hand, Trump is really taking the fight to the enemy. To the point where some of these fights have reached the Supreme Court, right? And he's challenging things like Humphrey's executive. The idea that there are people who technically work for the executive branch but can't be fired ever. And he's like, well, no, we need to get rid of these departments. And the Trump legal team was basically saying, or the DOJ is basically saying, well, look, we have all these two-letter agencies and all these people who work for them, and what branch of government are they in? Are they in the executive branch, or are they in the legislative? They work for Congress, not the judicial branch. They're not in the legislative branch. So if they're working for the executive, then the executive has to fire them. And I think it's very important because we're really in danger of having a government that can only go in one direction. It can only get bigger. It can never get smaller. And that seemed to be the kind of uninterrupted trend until Trump took office. So, I think it's very interesting to see this kind of insurgency happening on the left. The brand of the Democratic Party, even among lefties, is not that great these days, which I think is hilarious.
So, do you think the
Hmm.
socialist Democrats, do you
Yeah.
think they will take the same approach when it comes to the executive branch? If, like, let's say, worst case scenario, um, a socialist Democrat gets in the White House. Do you think that president would see government as an ally or wasteful? Because it's clear to me that Trump saw government as wasteful, but
Right.
establishment
Yeah.
Democrats have seen government as, you know, basically our parents.
Yeah.
Like, they should tell us what to do,
Yeah, that's right.
how to act, where to go,
Yeah.
how to,
Yeah, that's right.
if we should be
Yeah.
armed and stuff like that. Do
Yeah.
you see? Do you
Yeah.
see them praising government or seeing government as, something that needs to be overhauled?
Good question. They're going to want to overhaul any part of the government that uh, that's in their way. You know what I'm saying?
Mm.
But yeah, I certainly think that they'll see government as an ally. They want government to be everywhere and in charge of everything. Wasn't it AOC who said that the whole point of all this all green politics was simply to put energy production, to get more of energy production in the hands of the federal government? I believe that's a quote. Uh, and we should take her at her word. So yeah, I think that's certainly what they'll do. And the interesting thing is, um, this is, you can see the road toward a kind of state capitalism, right? Where again, the very big players can more or less do what they want, and everyone else is squeezed, right? Because let's face it, when there is overregulation, right, in any industry really, who does overregulation tend to favor? It favors established players with lots of money. So, you know, our our uh, our progressive Democrat friends get into the power wherever, including the White House. And of course, they're going to go crazy for more regulation and more this and more that. These things are really going to reinforce the position of entrenched players. And yeah, I think that's definitely true. God forbid. I mean, you just have to think about California, right? I mean, think about San Francisco, think about Seattle, right? Think about what those cities have come to. Think about Chicago, and think about the philosophy that has run those beautiful American cities into the ground over the last 10, 20, 30 years. And now that's, um, that's at the highest level of government. I mean, by contrast, like Obama was a lefty, but he was more of like a company man, he was like an establishment. But he wasn't a disruptor. He wasn't even Trump was a disruptor from the right. You can't really say Obama was a disruptor from the left. He was a company man. He was a left wing company man. But these you can't even say that he was really like an ideas guy, right? Obama. You could say he was smart, but that's not the same as being an ideas guy. We have these people come up who have ideas and not give us some of their ideas. Yeah.
Okay. All right. All right.
Mhm.
Are you worried about the Democrats in this space where it seems like more and more socialists like Mandani are running for office? I'm not saying that they're winning elections or anything like that because
Right.
it's still early, but
Right.
there's a lot of them that are more out and proud. And
Sure.
20 years ago it used to
Yeah.
be like a,
Yeah.
a scarlet letter, to use a term,
You have 1 minute
Yeah.
left.
to
Yeah.
be labeled as a socialist
That's right.
in
Well,
either
that's right.
party.
Yes, that's true. I'm not necessarily worried about the socialists as such. But I'll tell you what I am worried about when I come back from this break.
All right. We'll be right back. Everybody on the Hidden Path Desk is going to disconnect and give us a call back. So stay tuned.
The caller has hung up.
Who better to ask than the candidate himself? Abdul Al-Sayed is the Democratic nominee for Senate for Michigan. He joins me now. Congratulations, sir.
Thank you so much, Jacob. It's like I see you in Detroit. I see you now. You're in New York. You're everywhere.
I got a lot of makeup on. I got a tired face, but I cannot imagine how tired you are. I was at your victory party last night, and the vibes were real. There are other people who are watching this very, very closely, including the Vice President of the United States, who was just asked on Fox News about your victory. Let me show you a little bit of what he had to say.
The base of the Democratic Party just wants radicals. It wants these DSA types. It wants people who hate even the idea of private property ownership. But it also, I think, tells us that that particular set of ideas is very popular in places you wouldn't expect. Because Al-Sayed, he's this guy who holds himself out as a working class hero, as a guy who's going to fight for the working class. How does he fight for the working class? By flooding his state and his country with low-wage immigrants.
In case you missed any of that, he said that the Democratic Party wants people who hate the idea of even private property ownership. It's very popular in places you wouldn't expect. Speaking of Michigan, he said you hold yourself out as a working class hero who's going to fight for the working class by flooding your state with low-wage immigrants. What's your response?
Is that Peter Thiel's boy with that Ohio charisma he's got? That guy. I think we've had enough of him. The last thing that he said that made any sense was hillbilly elegy. After he said that Donald Trump had no business being president of anything. That was the last time he made sense, and then he decided to suck up to power. But that's exactly what this is about. You've got Republicans who'll do anything for power and money, including corrupt their office, just like Mike Rogers has. For the 14 years he was serving in Congress, he took over $1 million from the pharmaceutical industry. He voted 19 times to raise prescription drug prices. And then he helped to architect the legislation that kicked off the opioid epidemic, killing nearly 600,000 people. Why? For money and power. But that's what that party's about. We're trying to get money out of politics to put money in your pocket past Medicare for All, which of course are things that people like Ohio J.D. Vance and Mike Rogers have no clue about because they've always been in it for themselves rather than for the public.
I was looking at some of the headlines about your victory that have come out, since last night. Democrats' path unclear. Democrats licking wounds. Warning for Democrats. These are mainstream headlines about you and the victory. What's your reaction to this?
Now.
All right, we are back, everybody. Let's get this graphic off.
Yes, we are.
We are back, everybody. You just heard an interview that was playing during the break with Abdul Al-Sayed. He was responding to Vice President J.D. Vance. What you didn't hear, Dexter, to run you up for what was planned during the break. I played the interview between, I'm not sure who this host is, but it was from MS Now, of Abdul Al-Sayed talking about how, he was responding to J.D. Vance. J.D. Vance said, was talking about how this is the Democrat Party now. They're pushing candidates who hate property ownership and is pushing ideals that is dangerous towards American value. So we'll get into that a little later. But before we broke, he was about to give us your commentary on a question that I asked. It's about,
yes.
Are you worried?
Am I worried about these?
Socialists.
Yeah. So I am not so much worried about them. What I'm worried about is the weak-kneed, kind of flabby, limp-wristed response of American conservatives to these socialists, right? And actually, I'm glad you played that. Interview in the break, because you see, because here's the thing, right? Okay, so you have an Abdul Al-Sayed who, like you said, represents um, represents some of the more way out ideas of this new kind of face of the Democratic Party. Okay. Now, people like J.D. Vance, right? I think the problem with J.D. Vance, for example, is his look. He dislikes these ideas as much as I do. Okay, but the problem is his response is tuned. I think his response lacks imagination, and I think that's a symptom of the larger problem in the conservative movement. To the extent we have a movement at all in this country, right? It's like, okay, socialists are bad. They're against American values. And here's the thing. It's fine to say that about socialists, right? But I think a better response across the board is one that goes to the heart of the case they are trying to make to American voters, right? And especially to young people, to to broke college grads, right? And broke grad students, to people who have who look ahead and they look around, they seem to have no realistic prospect for ever owning property, right? I mean, that's a lot of who is mobilizing to put people like El Said in office, to put people like Mamdani in office, who actually did get into office, right? El Said's still trying, but I'm saying, it's like, and socialists, democratic socialists, right? Communists, whatever you want to call them, they are making a compelling case to a substantial number of these people. People were like, this, what's going on? I'm not getting a fair shake. And so, in other words, to simply say that Al Said's platform or his program or his philosophy is against American values, yes, that's true. The question is, how useful is that statement as a political weapon? Right? Now, if you say, look, if instead of that, right, conservatives approach it like this, look, we think affordability is a problem too, but here's how we look at it. Here's how we intend to solve it. Here's what happens when you put these ideas in place versus these other ideas in place. And then, if I were conservative or going into what's conservative, I would then go and say, you don't have to take my word for it when I tell you that these kinds of policies lead to bad outcomes and lead to more people like you being broke. And I would actually go point to what Democrats have been doing in places like New York and Chicago and San Francisco and Seattle, right? I would dig right down into the history and would lean into things that, conservatives and Republicans are afraid to lean into. I would say, well, you want to own a business? What happened to the local businesses? What was that? When the Summer of Love happened and there was this shop zone, was that in Seattle or Portland? Jazz Shop, what was that?
I think that was in Seattle.
Seattle, okay, right. So it's like, well, how did the businesses there? How did they work? Right? A lot of people weren't broke. I was going to point to. Well, here's an example of people just like you trying to do their thing, trying to make their mark on the world, trying to make a living for them. And here is how government gets in their way. I would drill all the way down to that. And I would go further. I would start to talk about liberty in ways that are applied directly to people on the ground. And say, well, it's like maybe you've got a few skill sets, or you picked up a few skill sets, and you want to turn those skill sets into prosperity. The job market doesn't good, so you figure maybe you'll do this or that for a living. Look at how government is standing in the way of all these things in these municipalities that I just talked about. Right? This is the kind of thing that as being in the federal government, he can talk about, right? Because he doesn't have a municipal governance track record that people can point to and say, well, you didn't do enough about this and this and this and this. He can kind of stand above it all and say, hey, you know something, if you have this skill or that skill, or you want to do this or that and third, there's all these places run by lefties where that will get you in trouble, where you have to pay the state money, where you have to have a certificate, where you have to have permission to do these. You have to have permission to make a living. Right? I would get right down into that. And I would show how, yes, we have to regulate certain things about the economy, but there is such a thing as too much regulation. And there is such a thing as too much top-down control. We want you to have more control over how you turn your skill sets and assets into prosperity. You see, as long as the argument is, what I'm trying to say is, as long as the debate, as long as the argument is up in the air, in the realm of, high-sounding things like American values and traditions and stuff, well, that's really the appreciation of the choir, right? Because, we agree that American values matter, and we're down with this republic, and we're down with the history and the framers and so on and so forth. Okay, we're down with all that. So remember that that's not who these people like Mamdani, like El Said, that's not who they're making traction with. It's people like you and me. Not at all. So you have to go, you gotta get down there with them and hit them where it hurts. And I don't see enough conservatives, enough Republicans doing that. I see a lot of them just saying socialism is bad. Well, okay, yes, it's a bad idea. Why is it a bad idea? Why exactly? And then, okay, you can't just say it's a bad idea. You have to talk about, okay, here are some of the legitimate grievances that people do have with the way we do capitalism. Because we do have a problem with some elements of how we perform capitalism in this country. Well, big finance has too much influence. We do want a capitalism that's more based on industry than usury. You see, but no one wants to say that, but it's true. Like that's what it's about. Like if you really want American growth, then you have to invest in the capitalism of industry, of making things. And that's not some secret.
So let me
Trump said it. They all said it in the administration. Go on.
Let me ask you this question though. Do you believe that the average conservative voter is trying to listen to that message?
Well, here's the thing. We're not talking about the average conservative voter, because the average conservative voter is not going to vote for Abdul Said. You see what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. The problem is not convincing the average conservative not to vote for Mamdani. Mm-hmm. That's not the problem. The average conservative, look, in New York City, what I keep saying, the people with sense, the people who are probably much more conservative, stayed home. That's why I keep hammering on this point. It's not that conservatives are making some mass exodus from the party to vote for Democratic socialists. It's not happening. In places like New York, they are staying home. And by the way, I include conservatives who may ordinarily vote for Democrats and maybe voted for Trump this last time, right? They come in all shapes and sizes. But that's exactly what I'm saying. That's not who J.D. Vance has to persuade. Listen, if the economy is doing halfway decent, right, then whatever conservative voters are around are gonna be happy to give the conservatives another chance in office. The problem is that the kind of the disillusioned, disinherited, the kind of the disgusted people who really do have a legitimate grievance with how we do capitalism, who aren't really steeped in the traditions the way you or I might be. Okay, the problem is when things go poorly, right? When low turnout elections, the conservatives stay home, people with sense stay home, And the progressives get really active and excited, and they show up and they drive these elections. That's what's been happening. And to me, you have to start. You have to the conservative influences, conservative politicians, public figures, have to kind of up their game. And it seems like they don't want to talk about these things. They don't want to go after. They don't want to dig deep. And again, when they talk about liberty, they don't talk about it in terms of things that appeal to the average person walking around, which is very important. Libertarians have the same problem. Okay. And I was talking to someone a while ago. It was on another podcast, and I was saying, I gave an example. I said, how come? If I was a conservative, a public figure in New York, and I was a conservative, and I wanted to talk about liberty, and I wanted to make it hit home. I would talk about Eric Garner. I would talk about the death of Eric Garner. And I would say, look, forget about these, feelings you're supposed to have about the police. Let's put that aside for 1 second. And let us acknowledge that government is not backed by force. Government is force. And therefore, every law is an excuse for the government to apply force to you. And I would say, look, Eric Garner bought a bag of cigarettes. And when he bought them, they became his property. And what New York City and New York State said is, you're not allowed to sell your property. What? That's crazy. That's madness. That's how you talk about liberty. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. And I'm sorry, conservatives seem not to have the balls to engage with the subject matter at this level. They don't want to talk about that because I guess they're afraid they might be seen as anti-police or this or that or whatever. But whatever the reason, whatever the reason, let's get over that shit now. Because again, the high-minded concepts, and when people talk about, I mean, it's like libertarians have traditionally struggled, and conservatives have struggled too, to kind of boil those concepts down, because they're unwilling or afraid or lack the imagination to go there. So. Long-winded answer. Sorry, but that's what I'm worried about. I'm not worried because these people, their ideas are not that popular. That's the thing. Their ideas don't have to be that popular for them to gain ascendancy, especially in a year when people are feeling disgusted about politics, and a lot of people who might vote against that candidate just stay home. And that's what we have to worry about. And by the way, it's not just national office. It's not just state level office. It's all the in order to really have a conservative revolution, you've got to have people occupying all these little positions, precinct committee chair and so on and so forth. Okay, where is the energy going to come from? Who are you going to get who's actually excited and who wants to get into government to change things? Mm-hmm. Even the young, what should be the young insurgents in the conservative movement, okay, are not interested. What were the New York Republicans doing? The young Republicans, the New York young Republicans doing last time we checked? Were they crafting white papers? Were they trying to get on major podcasts and talk about the future of New York City, the future of economic growth? So were they building their own infrastructure and social media and whatever so they could talk about it? No, what were they doing? They were playing racial grab ass on Telegram.
So what you're essentially saying is that you're more worried about low voter turnout on the conservative side.
Yes, I'm worried. Yes, that's one of the things I'm worried about. Because again, if ordinary people do not, well, firstly, if conservatives keep being as bad as they are at making friends, then people will just, conservatives will stay home. people on the fence will say, well, I might as well try this guy with the crazy ideas because no one else is talking to me. Right. And of course, the young, excited progressives will continue being young, excited progressives, and they'll go out and hit the streets and do all the stuff they did for Mamdani. And that's obviously enough to drive an election. If half the people stay home, as happened in Mamdani's election, then yes, that those cadres of young, excited progressives who don't understand math is enough to put the man in office. So that's what I'm worried about. And conservatives need to get on the stick. And if they're not up to it, they need to stand aside and let someone else do the job. And by the way, I just want to, before I finish my rant, it is interesting to me, right, that someone like Sonny Johnson, our friend Sonny Johnson, only spoke at CPAC once. And that's because she was Maj Touré's +1. Now, there's someone who talks about these values in down-to-earth ways, who talks about capitalism versus social, in down-to-earth ways that people can understand. She's not hitting you with a whole lot of theory. She's coming at you in a way where you can see what's going on, and she's got imagination and energy, and she's a principled conservative, and the GOP wants nothing to do with it.
Shout out to Sonny.
Why she is not. Okay. Well, I mean, you know what I'm saying? Though? Like, why they aren't flying her around the country, I have no idea. Like, I have no idea. And you and I can think of some other conservatives in our circle who are like, well, yeah, if the GOP was for real, they'd be blowing up their phone right now. They're not interested. They're not serious. Again, if Curtis Sliwa is running against Zoran Mamdani as the conservative candidate, then the conservatives are not serious. If the conservatives are sitting around going, yeah, we're just going to ignore Chicago for now, even though Brandon Johnson may not even run again, because Chicago is because the Brandon Johnsons of the world are not beatable, then you're not serious. You're not serious. And so that's, yeah, I mean, end of rant. I could go on all night about this. But yeah, man, I'm not, yeah, these far left ideas are not that popular. They're just not. But in the absence of something to hold on to in hard times, people might flip a coin and say, what the hell? And that's the problem.
Yeah, I think I'm on the same page with you when it comes to that being a worry, because I do feel like in these areas where it's supposedly, and I say this with quotation marks, but y'all can see me. Mm-hmm. Where Democrats dominate, like, you know, Michigan, New York, all these places, right? Blue states. I do worry that the Republican spirit, conservative spirit, I should say, because we're not party loyalists here, but the conservative spirit in these states is what's the word I'm looking for? Defeated.
It's dwindling.
Yes, dwindling, defeated. Like they just gave up. They run any outrageous candidate because they know they're gonna lose. They don't put no money into it, no effort into it. There's no groundwork. There's no online work. There's no, money that's going from being donated to these candidates. Because they just automatically assume that, hey, we're not going to win anyway. So what's the point of running? And the Democrats in red states, they're not thinking that way. They're putting money, real money into these candidates to take Texas, Florida,
that's right.
Georgia, all these other places where they are not worried about can we win or not. Oh, we lost the last time. Well, let's put more money and effort into this race.
Right. Let's exactly look. I just read a story in the AP about how the DNC decided they added like a list of, I think it was a dozen or so districts where Trump performed very strongly in the last election, and those districts are on their target list. So okay, we're going to go after, right? We're going to go after these places, even especially because Trump won them, right? They have a mindset where okay, if the adversary has a weakness, let's try to exploit that weakness, right? And here's the crazy thing, though. The crazy thing about conservatives, right, is that when I say crazy, I mean retarded. Is that their stance seems to be that their enemy has no weakness, right? And even at the same time that they say well, their ideas are terrible because their ideas really are terrible, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we have the Democrats don't have a weakness. What do you mean they don't have a weakness? They're not weak in New York. Yes, they are weak in New York. They're all weak in it. Just you are also weak and you're cowardly. That's the problem. You're cowardly. You're soft. Huh? You're complacent. You're a clock watcher. That's the problem. Some Democrats are super strong in New York, or they have a brainwashing machine that they've turned on in Chicago. Not at all. I mean, Jesus, you've seen the clips, huh? Black folks in Chicago are spitting mad at Brandon Johnson.
Oh, they hate him. They hate him.
They hate him. Now, who's talking to them?
What's crazy is that I believe
Who's
that they
talking?
view Brandon Johnson as a sellout because he's not doing enough for for the black community, but two, for the Americans living in Chicago. He caters more towards immigrants.
Well, here's the thing. I don't think, I mean, yeah, I see what you mean. But here's the thing. I really do think that black Chicagoans wouldn't care if they had someone, if they elected someone, or if someone came up who stood a realistic chance of lowering their property taxes, right? Of kind of making it less expensive for them to work on their houses or expand their businesses or whatever, who improve the situation as far as public schools, as far as infrastructure, what have you. They wouldn't look at that and say, no, you have to have some special program for Black Americans. No. I really do think, look, they're mad at Brandon Johnson. And yes, immigration is a hot button issue. But it doesn't take much political imagination to go to a situation as a conservative and say, hey, you know something? It's not just, here's the problem with Brandon Johnson is worse than you think. It's not just his immigration stance that is the problem. And let me show you why. Let me show you how these people are running you and your city into the ground and have been. And here's how I'm going to change that. Here's my philosophy. Here's what I believe about you and your ability to actually make something of life in America. Because I believe in you. Brandon Johnson does not. You see what I'm saying? Look, as far as I'm concerned, it's a weakness that's not being exploited. And again, conservatives have a habit of not exploiting the enemy's weakness on that level. Again, Trump, being a disruptor, right, was able to successfully exploit the enemy's weakness, especially in this last election. But again, having one guy in the White House is not enough. You have to start taking over these cities. So I just, yeah. I mean, even look. So here in New York, right? Kathy Hochul, who, I mean, basically has no personality, right? I mean, she has negative charisma. Okay. And she doesn't have any kind of great record to run on, right? Okay. Now we have Bruce Blakeman, who's like a Suffolk County executive, running against her for governor. Well, very well. So my question is this: it's August, right? The elections are in November. Okay. Where is he? Like, have you seen any podcasts, any popular podcasts with Bruce Blakeman as a guest?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if you're running for governor of New York State, I'm pretty sure you can get like there's influencer podcasters who will take your call. Right, like you know, no, you're not running for governor of some or for mayor of some podunk town somewhere. You're running for governor of New York State in an atmosphere where, like, it is seen, right? That the atmosphere is like, oh, we're fighting for the future. You know, this is the Democratic Socialists have a vision for the future, and we're gonna you know, take our ideas and we're gonna bash them against their ideas and see who can, right? I mean, this is the kind of spirit of the time right now. And it's like, so Bruce Blakeman could get some, you know, could get in front of some hot mics. Where is he? That's a problem. That's a problem. And I don't know if it's because of him, if it's because of his team, it's whatever, but I'm sorry. You can get, you know, you can start to get a lot more of your ideas out there. And, you know, listen, if he turns it around and really starts pushing hard in the next couple months, wonderful. But I mean, what's hold up? Okay, you say he's busy. He's got a current job. He's kind of an executive. Well, okay, you know, it doesn't take that much to have one of your staffers come into your office with an iPhone and have you record like a 60-second clip and put it online. Talk about one thing. You know, oh yeah, I just want to talk about the, you know, we saw last week that government, Mayor Mamdani did this and this and this, and Hochul was responsible for this. Here's what that's done. Whatever. As a conservative, here's what I think. We can do this, and this. It's time to rethink. Boom, done, out, next. So even if you have a busy job, I mean, okay, you're busy, but you're not the president. Calm down, right? You can take a few minutes out of the day to record something. And have a kind of a social media strategy. And you have some of your staffers call around to big podcasters and say, listen, this is, you know, my guy wants to talk to you. Do you want to talk to
You
my
have
guy?
1 minute left.
So, yeah. Speaking of Democrats, our least favorite Democrat just chimed in. I'm going to drop and call you back.
All right. You're listening to the Hidden Path with Carbon Mike.
The caller has hung up.
We're going to give you guys a little break, and then we are going to come back with some more commentary. Stay tuned.
We're following breaking news in Riverton tonight where people inside a gas station just shot and killed a man after he brought a shotgun inside of the store.
So you know what they say, goofy behavior begets goofy results. And in Riverton, Utah, one man found that out about as permanently as a person can find anything out.
They say that this started when an individual entered the Holiday and demanded alcohol from the clerk. He did not have his ID on him and was denied, and then some sort of altercation ensued. Two bystanders attempted to de-escalate the situation. That individual then left the Holiday and got back into his car.
So we're all clear on the stakes here. This whole thing kicked off over a beer run, and two strangers who had absolutely nothing invested in this man's night still tried to talk him down and walk him out of the door like grown folks, which is the part everybody's gonna skip past on the way to the arguing about guns. He had his exit. He was in the car. The tape was rewinding on the worst version of this evening, and all he had to do was drive home.
He drove around the parking lot and retrieved his firearm, a shotgun, and went back into the Holiday.
He drove a lap. That's the part that gets me, because a lap around a parking lot is not a heat of the moment decision. That's a whole itinerary. That's time to think, time to cool off, time to remember you've got a life to get back to. And he used every second of it to go get a shotgun and walk it back through the door of the store with people in it. And I bet money he thought that was the trump card, that he pops up with the long gun and everybody in there.
Start the conversation now.
All right, everybody. Welcome back to the Hidden Path. We are back with our gracious host, Mr. Carbon Mike, aka Nestor Taylor. Real quick before we go into our next topic, Nestor, you want to tell everybody about the podcast that you're going to be on next week?
Oh yeah,
In a couple of weeks.
Actually, it's this week. Yeah, this week at actually, what's today? Today's date is
The
10th.
the 10th,
So,
yeah. So about
the
9
ninth. Oh,
days.
yeah. No, we're the 10th, right? So yeah, actually, there's a few. So for example, I'm going to be talking with Chris Cooper. That's Kuper from the National Association for Gun Rights. Chris is a good friend of mine, and NAGR is a great organization. They made me a lifetime member after I got indicted, which I thought was awesome. So yeah, I'm going to be talking with him, doing an interview with him at 3 p.m. I don't know whether it's going to be live streamed or, but in any case, he's almost going to record it. So if you follow Chris Cooper on X, and if you follow NAGR on X, you'll probably be able to pick that one up. This Saturday at around 2 p.m., I will be with our friend Sonny Johnson on Sonny's Corner. That's Sirius XM Patriot, yeah, Sirius XM Patriot, right? That's this Saturday, and then next week, Wednesday, I'm very excited. I'm going to be on the Dangerous Liberty podcast, and that will be. Hang on a second. What time will that? Yeah, I think that's going to be live streamed
7 p.m.
and 7 p.m. Yep, that's when. So yeah, I've got a few things. Lined up. I'm very excited.
Yeah.
And we may extend it to more than one appearance with Dangerous Liberty. So that podcast is hosted by Nate and Gary. Shout out to Nate and Gary and their lovely and talented producer Jen. And yeah, I'm really looking forward to getting down with those guys. So yeah, good stuff.
What's funny is that, you know, the day that you're going to be on that podcast, Dangerous Liberty, is at my actual birthday. So.
Oh shit! That's your birthday?
Yeah, August 19th. August 19th is my birthday. So we all gonna be hanging out.
All gonna be hanging out. That's good stuff. Yeah, bro. Yeah. So yeah, and let's see. Oh, and of course, I was on a podcast with Ernest Hancock. That's the Declare Your Independence podcast. This was a couple of weeks in July 22nd. That was with Ernest Hancock, and then I think the 21st I was on with James Babb and Ammon Bundy. That's the Enemies of the State podcast. That actually was their first podcast episode. So wherever they're storing their podcast episodes online, people can go and look up. I thought it was a great talk. We had a lot of fun. And Ernest Hancock was also a lot of fun to hang out with and to chop it up with. So shout out to those guys. And yeah, I'm just gonna keep pushing. I just reached out to Dana Lash's producer Kane the other day. Hopefully we'll hear back soon. It's been a while since I talked with my friend Dana Lash, so I'm looking forward to that. And I'm putting an ATB out on Larry Sharp. Like, Larry, if you can hear this, we got to do another interview. We got to do another interview. So call my mom. That's it. So yeah.
So yeah, that's a few appearances that our host, Mr. Dexter Taylor, aka Carbon Mike, will be making an appearance on. But getting back to the show, back to the hot topics, and we're talking about what's crazy about the whole socialist thing is that it seems to me that they changed their stance on the Second Amendment a little bit. Let's not be too hasty here. They're not pro-gun. They're extremely anti-gun. However, they seem to be more pro-gun towards themselves now. You know, we've always know that the Democrats are pro-gun towards, you know, themselves. They just don't want you or me being able to possess firearms, but they seem a little bit more pro-gun now. You know, I see a lot. They're kind of shifting gears of like preaching the word of gun control too much now. Like, it used to be that they'll come out and say things like, yeah, you know, we need gun control. We want to protect kids. You know, no kid deserves to be shot in the school, or, you know, we don't want those dangerous weapons on, you know, city streets, the dangerous weapons that they claim that you had, which we all know that wasn't. But that's neither here or there. But now they're like, yeah, they're kind of changing their messaging a little bit, where they're more quiet on that part. They're not speaking about that. And, you know,
so wait a minute. So would you say it's a change, or just they're just shutting up about it?
Yeah, it's a change in strategy as far as like talking about it. Their political strategy is no longer to push gun control because it's not popular.
Right.
And
in other words, they'll still push it if they get into office, but they're not trying to push it rhetorically. Right.
Exactly. And I feel like, in my opinion, conservatives, getting back to what we were talking about, like, you know, conservatives not attacking their enemies on the merits. I feel like conservatives are not really pushing the idea of being armed anymore. You know, like people who are not a part of, who are not like a part of the fight. When I say fight, people who are like normally in this in the space. You mentioned national gun rights.
Yeah.
You know, there are people who are going to push for the Second Amendment, people arming themselves, you know, training always. But, you know, someone who is outside of that community who is also conservative, is not really attacking the Democrats on that. You know, you see where I'm going with this, right?
That's right. Yeah, exactly.
Well, speak on that.
Yeah, so here again, this is something that for some reason conservatives are afraid to lean into, right? Because of course, the natural and normal and proper and sensible thing to say, if you're a conservative and you're trying to start to kind of, you know, repair the conservative brand that in places like New York and Chicago, whatever, what would you say? You would say, well, you know, something. One of the things, you know, conservative governance in these cities is going to mean more of a focus on the fundamentals of what the criminal code is for, which is protecting the decent from the wicked. It's not protecting you from yourself, right? It's not protecting, you know, your liver from alcohol or your stomach from too many calories. It's protecting the decent from the wicked. But we have to be honest that in places like this, let's say you're in Chicago, say places like Chicago, Democrats have run this place for a long time, and it's going to take a lot of work, right, to bring Chicago back and to make it a truly safer city instead of just, you know, playing with the stats like Democrats like to do. And this is one of the many reasons why we plan to attack anything that's getting in the way of law-abiding citizens being able to engage in armed self-defense. We think that's critical. We believe in that. We believe that, you know, Chicagoans of good character, right, need to have a government that that doesn't make itself their enemy when they decide they need to arm themselves to defend their persons, their homes, their families, their businesses. We think that's in the finest American spirit, and we are on your side. That's not a hard thing to say. I mean, you know, of course, the follow-through is important because talk is cheap, but at least to say, like, that's not a hard thing to say. Conservatives won't say it.
All right. You know,
but I think they should be saying. Yeah, go on.
So we all know about the ICE shootings, right? the shootings of Megan. I'm saying Megan Good. I forget her first name. I know her last name is Good.
Samantha Good?
I think that's her name.
Samantha or Sarah? Yes.
I think it was Sarah Good.
And what's his name? Pretty.
Yeah.
Sarah Good and Alex Pretty. Yeah.
Yeah, Alex Pretty and Sarah Good.
Yeah.
The Democrats, and especially the socialists, especially Madani too, they pushed something in my eye. They pushed this idea that, you know, government is attacking its citizens and that Alex Pretty was allowed to carry a firearm. And, you know, Democrats pushed this whole idea of, you know, it's us versus the government, and they're attacking you for, you know, standing up for your fellow man and standing up for your rights. And this whole idea, like, all of a sudden they became very pro-gun when it came to that.
Right.
On the flip side,
right,
in comparison, we had a mass shooting recently out in Idaho, at a In-N-Out fast food restaurant, and a armed citizen, you know, returned fire against the perpetrator, distracting him and drawing his fire away from innocent civilians. The guy is being held as a hero, which he is. Let's be frank.
Yes.
But you don't see hardly any Republicans talking about that.
Right.
So why? In my opinion, why?
Right. I can say, well, I mean, here's my opinion. That's a symptom of the same thing I'm talking about. This lack of imagination, this lack of political courage, right? This lack of a desire to go after the adversary where the adversary is weak. No one is weaker than Democrats on the Second Amendment. Now, okay, there have been some awfully weak Republicans, don't get me wrong. There's awfully weak Republicans on the Second Amendment. Rudolph Giuliani was one. Very weak. In fact, I would say he was anti-Second Amendment. National news. It doesn't always. But there's a ton of stories about successful defensive gun use. And conservatives refuse to lean into that and to say, this is one of the many reasons we think Democrats are wrong on the Second Amendment. And if conservatives are given a chance to govern in places like this and this, that, and so, we are going to make it our business to protect your rights as city dwellers, to protect your rights as law-abiding citizens to engage in armed self-defense. There it is. Again, they're unimaginative, they're soft, they're complacent, they're weak. And some subset of conservatives choose to kind of like compensate for that weakness, by, like I said, playing racial grab ass on social media, like the New York Young Republicans were doing on Telegram.
Oh, speaking of that, I got a story for you out of Florida on that.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah. Yeah. So, and speaking of that, oh well, I am not I believe in getting hysterical just because someone said something racist. I think that's nonsense. Racism is just a sin of intellect, like any other sin of intellect. It's not, you know. Right? If it's just rhetorical, it neither breaks my leg nor picks my pocket. My point is that the young Republicans of New York, who, you know, sane people like you and I would look around and say, well, the young Republicans of New York have a lot of work to do, right? Have a lot of work to do. We're not doing that work at all. Why? Because they're soft, they're lazy, they're complacent, right? So yeah, that's my thing about you know, people like that. I don't care about the fact that they're racist. I accuse them of a much worse sin than being racist. I accuse them of being boring. Stop boring me. Stop wasting my time. Right? We have work to do. So yeah.
No, most definitely. Most definitely. Oh no. Yeah, there's a story that I think you would find very interesting. Like, the young Republicans are out here in Florida are being accused of being, well, they're not being accused of being racist. However, there's some parallels here. And see if you are, I'm gonna see if you are in agreement with what I'm saying here. So, the young Republicans out in the Tampa chapter, to be specific, there was a rally. Well, Byron Donalds, who's running for governor as a Republican, he's trying to obtain a Republican primary to be the nominee. There was a rally that he was holding where he was trying to gain support for the young Republicans of Florida, the Tampa chapter. One of their representatives said that they don't know if young Republicans would vote for Byron Donalds. He doesn't have the support of them, and he doesn't cite them or anything like that. And they're throwing their support around James Fishback. Now, James Fishback is very controversial because of his comments that he made about Byron Donalds. He said that Byron Donalds is a slave, and what he meant by that is that he's a slave to corporate interests and things like that. He's bought and paid for. He also said something about him being a Section 8 candidate, using what a lot some people will subscribe to, will say is dog whistles. You know, dog whistles that he's a ghetto black candidate or something like that. Derogatory terms used to describe black people. So, do you believe that by them supporting James Fishback, Democrats have already said, like, the reason why they're not supporting them is because Byron Donalds is black and they don't want to support a black candidate. What are your thoughts on this whole situation?
Okay, so I mean, if they're saying that okay, so I mean, I have my own feelings about I mean, it's just this guy fits if he so assuming he said these things, he's just, again, he's guilty of the same kind of like softness and a weakness and lack of imagination, right? So, not surprising, because there's a lot of that going around. Okay. Now, on the one hand, I would say, look, anyone can feel free to support any candidate, right? So I don't want to get into the thing where we're saying, well, if you don't support the black candidate, then as a conservative, then that means you're this, that, and the third. Now here's the question: are they saying that they wouldn't vote for him? Let's say, are they saying that if Byron Donalds won the primary, they wouldn't vote for him over?
That is the fear.
Democrat?
Yes. That is the fear. They didn't outright say that, but they said that they will have a hard time supporting them. Yes. So I guess you can say
okay. So yeah, right. So I mean, right. So it's one thing to say, well, I support this. Maybe Fishbeck has some ideas they like better than Byron Donalds' ideas. I'm being as charitable as possible, right? So that's maybe, but I mean, look, at the end of the day, this is just, whatever the reasoning behind it is, this is just kind of another example of Republicans carving their own brand with people who they should be looking to invite in. Right? I'm not talking about inviting in Byron Donalds. Byron Donalds has to get out there and fight in the arena and get the votes like everyone else. I'm talking about the electorate, right? This is a common thing with Republicans, right? They'll say stupid stuff. They won't speak up when they should. They'll do a bunch of dumb dog whistles, and then when the black electorate doesn't show up in sufficient numbers, then they'll cry like bitches about how, oh, we can't get the support of this, that, and the third. So yeah, that's more of that reincarnation, right? I don't know very much about Fishbeck, but I mean, at the very least, yeah, if you're calling the dude, I mean, if you're calling him a section 8, I mean, Jesus Christ, you're both Republicans. You're running, right? You're in a primary. Why is that kind of language necessary? That's just dumb, So yeah, I'll put it this way: I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised that Republicans being stuck on stupid. It doesn't surprise me, And like I said, maybe they have a very good reason, like an actual ideological reasons for saying support Fishbeck over. So maybe. But it certainly has that smell to it, right? That same old kind of Republican retaliation. And the interesting thing is, I think this part of this, my theory is that part of this is this very extremely retarded idea that Republicans have that it's really kind of a club. You know what I'm saying? It's like and in other words, they don't fight as if they're really trying to win. They fight as if it's just fun. We want to make sure that our club has the right kind of people in it, which is beyond stupid, right? You're trying to get as many people as possible, and we have to be honest. Even given the dismal racial history of the Democratic Party, Republicans can't help covering themselves in shit every time they get a chance. It's really amazing. It's astounding. And I was complaining about this years ago, not obviously with these individuals, but when Obama was president and Newt Gingrich said he's the first welfare president, first food stamp, or whatever he said, right? I used to talk to other conservatives and say, look, this is the kind of thing this is a branding problem. Like, why would you do that to your brand? Why? In other words, if Barack Obama has bad ideas that you don't like, then the thing to do as a conservative is to say he has bad ideas we don't like. You know what I'm saying? If you think the economics of Obamacare are bad and unworkable, right? Then the thing to do is to say that the economics of Obamacare are bad and unworkable. Not Barack Obama secretly hates white people and wants to kill your grandmother, and that's why he's, doing this Obamacare. That's just dumb. And I'm sorry. I mean, you can't fix stupid. Don't get mad at me. I didn't make them stupid. That was the Lord's work, right? But I mean, it's just dumb. Again, I don't want to go and say, the young Republicans of Tampa are saying this because Byron Donalds is black. At the end of the day, that gets you into this dumb argument where he's like, well, you can't read their minds, and maybe we can skip all that and just say, this like itself seems to suffer from a little bit of retardation. And so if you see that this guy who's running the primary is kind of retarded, then it seems kind of retarded to be like, and that's our guy. It's one thing to hold back and say, we'll see, play cards close to the vest and say, we'll see, but to be like, nah, the retarded guy that's the one. That seems like what's retarded. But again, this is a common thing. This is a common thing. And this is why Republicans don't win as much as they should with people who really are, when you come down to it, very conservative. So working class Black Americans. If you cut out, the academics and the people who work in media, you know what I'm saying? Like, I'm not going to say, Don Lemon is conservative. But I'm saying if you talk to people who actually go to work every day for a living, people in the skilled trades who happen to be Black, these are your natural allies. These are your natural allies as a conservative. This is who you should be trying to woo among other demographics, right? And if you can't bring yourself to try to woo them, then maybe, I don't know, try not alienating them. But this is the state of affairs. This is where we are. And that's it.
Trying to set something up here real quick. Give me 1 second.
You got a clip for us?
Yeah, I got a clip from what James Fishback had said about Byron Donalds. I want you to
okay.
All
right. While you're setting that up, I'll go through some of my other topics that I have in my notes. We have the Senate approved a last-minute funding bill that will fund the government through December 11th. They want to avoid another shutdown, at least until after the 11th of December. So there's some frustrating that went on with this funding bill. There are delays on some proposed rules, including rules on grants and a national cannabis ban of some kind. I don't know where that's going to go.
We have 1 minute left.
There is to be no money transferred to the Border Patrol, which I think is probably just a cosmetic kind of concession that the Democrats asked for, because the Border Patrol probably has, they have their operational budget set, I'm guessing. Government is funded until December 11th, at which point we will see what happens. Our least favorite Democrat has just chimed in, so I'm going to drop and come on back.
All right.
The caller has hung up.
So give us a second, everybody. I'm going to play a clip once Dexter come back. We'll be right back. You're listening to The Hidden Path.
Dexter. Hello, this is a free call from
Dexter Taylor.
An incarcerated individual at New York State Department of Corrections and Community Supervision. This call is subject to recording and monitoring. An incarcerated individual's use of institutional telephones constitutes consent, and your calls may be provided to law enforcement agencies. To accept this free call, press 1. To refuse this free call, press 2. If you would like to permanently block your number from receiving calls from this facility, press 6. Preventing suicide is important. If you have concerns during this call, please contact the individual's facility to communicate with them. Thank you for using Securus. You may start the conversation now.
All right, we are back. We are back. Welcome back to the Hit Bath. So I'm currently trying to set up a clip. I'm trying to share it.
You got.
My
You
mic.
think there are 6 genders and so on?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
All right.
Yeah.
So I think our audio was muted for a second, but it should be back.
Okay. So here's my question. What why would it split like in other words, one person is going to come out of the Republican primary, right, and face up against whoever comes out of the Democratic primary. So why would that split the vote?
Give me a second. Some audio.
Mm-hmm.
Say that again.
We're having audio issues.
Yeah, we was
so what
having
I'm
a few
saying is that-
audio issues. For some reason, StreamYard muted the mics for some. I don't know why, but
Oh shit.
when we had that little audio
Okay.
issue when we was in the break. But anyways, just to recap, everybody was talking about the Florida Republican primary for governor. There's two candidates. There's the leading candidate, which is Byron Donalds. He's endorsed by Trump and the MAGA movement. And then you have, long shot in the dark, James Fishback. He's more popular with the younger Republicans, specifically in the Central Florida area and South Florida area. He's very popular. James Fishback has made several comments about Byron Donalds, including calling him a slave to corporate interests, and that he is, that's what he'll be. They're both against. They're both are against data centers. They're both are promising lower taxes, things like that. Some people, some criticism of James Fishback's comments have, brought race into the forefront. Byron Donalds is, I can tell you right now, Byron Donalds is likely to win his primary race. However, he is running against a Democrat who has a lot of money and power behind him by the name of David Jolly. Look him up. David Jolly is basically James Tallarico. If you know who James Tallarico is, the Senate candidate out in Texas, David Jolly is the same thing. They come from the same party platform, playbook, and everything. There seems to be a belief that if Byron wins the primary, that because James Fishback supporters will be disgruntled and upset that Byron won and their candidate didn't win, they're going to stay home. They're not going to vote in the general, which will cause Byron to lose.
Okay.
What's your thoughts?
So yeah, I do. So that's what you mean by splitting. It's not really splitting the vote. It's more like they're just gonna, the disgruntled Republicans will stay home. So I mean, look, at the end of the day, it would be a shame if the Democrat won, right? But if that's what happens, so be it. Right? I mean, like let's be realistic about it. I think of Florida as being a great state for business and people who care about the Second Amendment and homeowners and whatever. Okay. And part of that is because it's been governed along kind of more or less conservative, pro-growth principles. If some segment of Florida's young Republicans, have fallen so much in love with Fishback that they can't bear to see a Republican other than Fishback win, and you all get a Democratic governor, so be it. Right? I mean, that's right. That's politics.
That is politics.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, it would be a shame, but hey, listen, that's up to them.
Hey, I mean, that person will be like the one-term governor, but it is what it is.
Well, yeah. Well, listen, you can do a lot of damage in one term. A lot of damage in one term. Okay, so again, let the young Republicans go to God bless you. You know what I'm saying? Go do your thing. And yeah, by all means, if you want to stay home because your guy didn't win the primary, then stay home. That's fine. You know, what are we going to say to them? You know what I'm saying? It's like if it's so serious to them, right? That the wrong Republican won, and so now we're going to stay home and let the Democrats run the table. Okay, fine, do it. Just listen, you can't fix stupid. It is not fixable, right? Ignorant and curious you can fix. Like if you don't know and you would like to know, that can be fixed. But stupid, impossible, can't be done. So that's it.
Is there fear?
About America.
Is there fear?
You can be stupid as you want.
Is there fear where this could happen in other races around the country, in key races?
It could happen. Of course, it could happen in any race in the country. I mean, it's politics, right? Anything can happen in any race, right? So yeah, sure.
What do you say to those conservatives who get, upset that their candidate didn't win, their favorite candidate?
Well, who get upset? If they're merely upset, I'll say, well, okay, you're upset. That's fine. I acknowledge that you're upset. If you're asking what I would say to conservatives who then plan to stay home and give a Democrat a chance to win, I would say maybe you should grow up.
I agree.
But
I think it's childish.
Feel free. I would also say, feel free not to. Maybe you should grow up, but far be it from me, right, to drag you kicking and screaming into the world of adulthood. Feel free not to grow up if you want to. That's your business. Right? So that's it. But you see again, what have I been saying, right? It's like that's part of the retardation, right? That's it right there. It's like they're not playing a grown-up game. Now, here's what's interesting. Like Democrats, okay, their ideas, their economic ideas are beyond infantile. That is true. But their political game is fully adult. You see what I'm saying? And they're on offense. So, mess around if you want to and let them take over. Let them take another red state and start to turn it down. Go right ahead. I mean, it's bad enough. It's bad enough. You've got a lot of people, there's a phenomenon, right, where refugees from blue states show up in red states and turn states purple, right? So this could happen in California as well. Right? It's not. It is not out of the question for it to happen in California. It happened in Colorado. It happened really hard in Oregon. I mean, Oregon's not purple. It's really blue at this point, I would say.
It's solid blue. I would say not Oregon, all of Oregon, but like the Portland is solid blue.
There you go. Yeah, right. Well, that's what there's a lot of states. A lot of blue states are blue because of one or two municipalities, right? So yeah, Arizona's mostly red except for Maricopa County, right? And so, and actually, to come and think of it, the Arizona shenanigans. I think there were some shenanigans in the last election, but it's possible that there were some conservatives who, I don't know, didn't like the fact that Karen Lake had Trump's endorsement. So you've got Katie Hobbs. Enjoy. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, if you want to let some dude who thinks there's 6 genders and is for child mutilation and whatever, he's going to do as much damage as he can in your state.
Oh, it's been updated. It's been updated, Carmen. It's now 96 genders. There's 96 genders.
96. I'm sorry. Yeah, it's hard to keep up. All right. So yeah, I mean, if the young Republicans in Tampa want that, then that's they're within their rights to stay home or do whatever else they want to do.
So
that's it.
Getting into our last segment for the night, because it's going to take about an hour to talk about this fair woman.
Mm-hmm.
AOC Alexandria
Oh my
Ocasio
God.
Cortez, or whatever how you say her name. We're gonna get into talking about her here in a few minutes. But you got some quick hits you wanna talk about before you have to disconnect and come back?
Well, let's see. Well, I mentioned some of the news stories that I'd seen on the AP. You know, I mentioned the thing about wildfires. A lot of wildfires, a lot of hysteria about the planet on fire. Not so much talk about arson. Not so much talk about the fact that, again, government policy, especially in states like California, make wildfires and severe wildfires all but certain. You have to clear wood periodically from forests, or let Mother Nature do it. Mother Nature does it with fire. That's just how that is. So you know, that's kind of how that goes. And let's see. Well, yeah, the Iran thing I think is interesting, just because you know, we seem to be going back and forth. I said one or two shows ago that you know, what is interesting about Trump and the Iran war is that he seems to be, he's one of the few presidents I remember who've actually kind of waged war in a very Clausewitzian sense. Talking about Baron von Clausewitz, he was a 18th century, 19th century Prussian military strategist, thinker, and he talked about war being an extension of politics, a continuation of politics with the admixture of other means. And that seems to be what's happening with this Iran war, right? We're in this kind of diplomatic mode. We're going back and forth trying to cut a deal. Something breaks down. We turn up the heat in terms of, you know, airstrikes and so on, and then things cool down, and so we're back at the negotiating table. This is, I mean, I have to say, it's August. You know, we're playing this awfully close. I am satisfied that there was no emergency, such as the Iranians being, you know, 2 weeks from breakout on a nuclear weapon, on a nuclear device. There was no emergency that necessitated us actually initiating these strikes in the first place. So whatever Trump's reasons were, I have my own theories. The fact is that now he's in a position of trying to play a poor hand as well as it can be played. I think working against him is the fact that the midterms are coming soon, right? Working for him is, and also working against him is the fact that the Iranian government really does seem to be fragmented, seems to be fractured. There does not seem to be coherent leadership on the one hand, so you're never sure who you're negotiating with or whether that person really has the ability to make it exist and make it stick. And working, and then then the flip side of that is that even though the political leadership appears to be fractured, they seem to have put together a military apparatus that can operate without a kind of like without an intact chain of authority, right? It's like they seem to be able to launch missile strikes and dump guns in the water just fine, and it doesn't take much of that to make insurers nervous and to essentially halt traffic. The good news, if there is any, is that you know, some of the air has gone out of the balloon, right? Iran was held up as this country that you really couldn't mess with, because what if they blockade the Straits of Hormuz? They could crash the world's economy. Well, they have essentially blockaded the Straits of Hormuz. Not quite, but effectively. These ships can't transit. And for that period when ships could not transit, the world's economy did not collapse. So now, I think just by virtue of that, there's just much less, you know, if it's kind of like if that big threat didn't really materialize, then people just won't be scared And I think at some point, if this is an economic game of chicken, the fact is that domestic political damage aside, the U.S. can play this game longer than Iran can. That seems obvious, right? So we'll see how it plays out. But again, I hope for a quick end to it, and I hope prices start to come back down significantly before the elections.
Yeah, hopefully.
Yeah.
Hopefully, because
All right,
man,
so,
these gas prices are killing me.
Yeah. It's bad. So that's what it is. All right. So let's see. Yeah, I see. I'm at 30 minutes. We're about to hear our least
You
favorite
have
human
1 minute
chime
left.
in.
Yep,
And
that's
there
it.
she is. I'm gonna drop off, and we'll continue in the next segment.
All right.
All right.
So give us a
The caller has hung up.
second here, everybody. So I'm gonna go ahead and play a little clip for you guys by ALC. All right. That was ALC, everybody. I was playing that during the break there. Carpin. We about to get into her as a topic, but
Oh my God.
yeah, I know. So strap in, everybody.
Do we have to?
Strap in, everybody. It's gonna be a interesting hour to say the least. Let's go ahead and remove that. Stop sharing. There we go. We're back. So we are back once again. You guys was listening to the ABC interview with ALC, talking about her future in politics, and talking about the November elections, the primaries. So ALC, everybody knows who she is. So I really don't need to give y'all an introduction, but she is from the state of New York. She is, I forget which part of New York she represents, but she is based out of New York. She is a socialist and is not shy about it. She comes from that same cloth of what's his name, Bernie Sanders, and the rest of them. She is. I had saw a meme, and I want to clarify this is a meme. She hasn't said anything publicly of her possibly running as vice president as the number 2 on a Kamala Harris ticket. So Kamala and AOC, the nightmare ticket. So yeah. Anyways, I just had like a brain lapse. I may have had another stroke thinking about this.
If you didn't have one before you said Kamala AOC,
Yeah.
you almost certainly had one after you said it.
If that happens, y'all just tell my son about me, because I'm checking. I can't do this anymore.
Remember me in paradise.
Yeah. So
listen.
So yeah, AOC is a very interesting candidate. Like, she's a very interesting politician. She's one of those people who believes in feelings over facts and those things and those type of things. So what are your thoughts on AOC?
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, first of all, yeah, I think the whole thing about Kamala Harris and AOC running together is that that's Democrats talking because they got lips. That's all. I mean, I can't imagine. First of all, like, who was Kamala Harris going to go and where? How? Given her dismal performance in the last election, right? Where's she going? Where's she going to go? And aside from the fact that everyone got to see, it's not just like she performed badly because her opponent out-politicked her, which he did. It's also that she's horrible, and everyone got to see exactly how horrible she was, right? So I can't imagine that they're going to raise any money for that kind of thing. So I think that's just, again, people talking because they got lips. Okay, aside from that, look, how can I put this? It almost doesn't matter that AOC, whether or not AOC calls herself a socialist or whatever. The problem is that she doesn't have any, well, to the extent she has any ideas at all, which is a very small extent, her ideas are bad, right? And I want to touch on this because here's the thing. Again, I want to go back to some fundamentals, right? It is just a fact that, non-planned economies like ours, right? Our economy, it's not entirely a free market economy, very obviously, but it's obviously not a socialist, not a top-down planned economy. But it's what people call a free market system. It's non-planned. It's non-top-down controlled. Okay. The fact is that there are lots of things that can happen in such an economy that are not good for example, families. Right? Markets are capable, in other words, markets are capable of destroying all kinds of things that are actually good for families and good for communities. That's a fact. It does not mean markets are bad. Right? Economic growth is capable of inflicting all kinds of damage on actual communities and actual families, okay, that conservatives like us should have a problem with. This does not mean economic growth as such is bad. It means that people of clear-thinking people of good conscience, right, have to really think hard about how to exert downward pressure, right, on the negative aspects or the negative consequences of an economy like ours, which is not planned from the top. Okay, in other words, if conservatives like us decide that the way we're going to deal with the grievances people have with quote unquote capitalism, because that's what they tend to blame, even though capitalism is not always to blame as such. But this is what we'll say, goodness of capitalism. Okay, so if we pretend as if there's no problem, we pretend as if the market is going to fix everything, or we pretend as if there are no choices to be made, because we have chosen, or we've already chosen for capitalism, and therefore everything else, that there's no more else is to be, nothing else is to be said on the subject. If we say that as conservatives, right, then what we're doing is we're giving ground to the enemy, and AOC and people who think like her are the enemy, right? So she is going to continue to have some appeal to people who, the people who are just caught up in their feelings and are not thinking, but also the people who are thinking and who really don't see that anyone's addressing these real issues. For example, when I say real issues, what do I mean? Well, for example, if you have an economy that is dominated to an undue extent, or it is influenced, I should say, to an undue extent by mere finance, right? Like finance has its place. But if you have an economy where the finance guys seem to be running the table, then the problem is that, most people are not finance guys, right? And so some number of people are going to think, well, the ordinary working person, the ordinary working family can't get a fair shake. And that's not a situation you want to just let go unaddressed, right? So we have to talk about these things. You hear people like Zohran Mamdani talk about affordability. Well, affordability is an issue in places like New York. It's hard for working families to make it. Now, some of this is because of government, because of the actions of government, believe it or not. And some of it, we have to be honest, is because of finance. Real estate speculation, right? I mean, speculation in general, right, does a lot to distort markets. And we conservatives have to get right about this. You know what I'm saying? Like, we know, yes, we believe what Hayek said in The Road to Serfdom, right? That planned economies don't work. When governments think they can do better, right, by controlling the price of everything, they distort markets, and distorting markets is bad. Distorting price signals is bad, because then that's information you don't have. You're blinding yourself when you allow the government to kind of distort price signals. The prices of things are, constitute a kind of information that tells you, right, how much energy it took to make something, to make a good or service. You want that information. Okay, but on the other hand, you got some weird background noises there. On the other hand, governments are not the only entities that can distort markets, right? Finance guys can distort markets, right? Speculation markets, right? The notorious company Enron actually created what was essentially a mini energy crisis in California. This was a few years ago. This is back when I think Gray Davis was governor. Enron actually created an energy crisis and cost California, I think, on the order of billions of dollars. Now, that's funny because Enron, as a company, did not actually.
Why is it?
I'm do. Okay. will get out in front of it. I am less worried. I have to say, I'm less worried about the kind of the dumb culture war stuff that the AOCs of the world get into. You know, the stuff about there being like dozens of genders and all this business. I mean, I'm less worried about that. It's simply because, not because it's not a problem, but because, you know, so that's what I think. I think AOC is not the problem; she's a symptom. But the AOCs of the world will find themselves becoming more and more popular if conservatives don't get out in front and exert kind of political imagination and show how we can make our system work better, and we can make it work better without dismantling it. You know, we can actually repair the car, or at least, you know, make the car run better without smashing it. Like, that is something that is possible to do. You know, so that's what I think about her.
Again, everybody, I apologize for the technical difficulties. Sometimes my computer acts up. Sometimes it's all right.
Is fiddling with the tech on his side. Oh, there we go.
Yeah, we back. Yeah.
Okay.
So
I'm going to do some audio.
There were some audio visual things going on. I apologize to everybody who's been watching us. For some reason, the browser that I'm using, Chrome, which is recommended by StreamYard to use, just like dropped the audio and the video. So we're back. You should be able to hear us.
How long were we out?
Not long. Like a couple of minutes.
So yeah, couple of minutes. Okay, well, I'll just recap. I'll just recap. I think that it's possible for capitalist economies to evolve in ways that are not always to the benefit of the average working person and the average working family. And conservatives have to be able to get out in front of that issue, acknowledge it, and have ideas for how to deal with it. And if we don't do that, then the AOCs of the world, the Zohar Mamdani of the world, and their stupid ideas, they will get out there. And in the absence of any ideas from conservatives, more people might end up defaulting to the terrible ideas from socialists and progressives and other creatures of that kind. So that's why it's important for us. So the question I was answering when the audio went out was, am I worried about AOC? I'm not worried about AOC as such. I'm worried about the lack of a robust, thought out response to AOC. I'm worried about the conservatives' unwillingness and seeming inability to engage with people on the right level, so that they can see, oh, okay, her ideas are nonsense, and this actually makes sense. So I'm going to go with this. Socialists are bad is not good enough. Socialism is bad is not good enough. Communism is bad is not. All those things are true. Those are bad ideas, but it's not good enough. Right? So that was my answer.
All right, give me 1 second. I'm gonna play a clip. from
we're
Miss
playing the clip.
AOC herself.
No,
Hopefully
like
it
that.
works this time, because the last time I was told that it wasn't working.
How many tabs do you have open?
For real. Hold up. So let me go ahead and share the screen.
Okay.
I want you to hear this.
Okay.
Cortez joins me now. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Well, it's been a huge week. What does Abdel El Sayed's victory in Michigan say about the future of the Democratic Party?
I think that we are in a time of renewal for the Democratic Party, and it's tremendously exciting for all of us, for the big tent of the Democratic Party. We have really an ascendance of a young, inspiring, exciting electorate, energizing wave of candidates that I think really inject a new energy to the Democratic Party and add to the toolbox of candidates that we have to win the midterm elections, hopefully in November.
And as you'd seen progressives winning in a lot of these other primaries, it was often dismissed, people saying, oh, this is in very blue parts of the country, in big cities. But this is Michigan. I mean, this is battleground Michigan. And he won. Now he has the biggest test. Can he win in November? What does he have to do to win over those Democrats who opposed him?
Well, I think that this really is a moment, not just in Michigan, but across the country, where the party is unifying. The party is unifying, and it is focused on the November elections. We understand that our priority is the working class of this country. And we have to make the case that we're here to make people's lives better. And the Republican Party right now is jacking up prices, making housing impossible to afford. And we are focused on everything from healthcare to your grocery bill and making it more affordable for working people.
This week there was also a
I think your mic is muted.
So let me stop you right there.
Check 1, 2.
Let me stop you right there. Your thoughts on this, on what she said thus far?
So notice that she said something about, a very young, excited, engaged electorate, right? Now, I mentioned this earlier in this show, right? And I talked about, young, broke college graduates, young, broke grad school kids, right? Yes, that's, again, young people who should be excited about the future, right? And don't see a lot of options, right? And are staring down the prospect of actually doing worse than their parents did, right? Those are a lot of who voted for Mamdani, for example. And those are the kind of people who tend to vote for the AOCs of the world, right? This is a problem. And now, again, she doesn't talk about it like that. She said they're young and excited. But the reason, it is my theory, that the reason they're kind of coming out, to the extent that they are coming out for people like AOC, that they come out for people like Mamdani or like El Sayed, is because they are to some extent disinvested, right? It's when I was outside, every now and then I'd talk to some young person just in this core demographic, right? Just graduated from college a few years ago and looking around or whatever, and I noticed quite a few of them, if they didn't call themselves socialists, they were very friendly to socialist ideas. And what I realized was that, oh, right, this person does not own anything and does not see their way clear to owning anything, right? She actually made a semi-decent point about the price of housing, which, I mean, let's be honest, it's not necessarily that the Trump administration is jacking up the price of housing, but housing is an interesting thing because it's subject to a lot of factors, including energy prices, which of course the Iran war is helping. But more broadly, right? In municipalities, right? Cities and towns do a lot to make it more expensive to own a home. It's also the case that politicians in office, no matter what party they're in, right, they pay a political price when the values of people's homes go down. Think about it, right? When you hear about this part of town is doing badly, home prices are crashing. That's a bad thing for homeowners. But the problem is that people who don't have homes yet, people who are in a position or who want to buy their first home at some point, they want low house prices. So that's an interesting thing to try to juggle. Do I think that the AOCs of the world are going to successfully juggle that with their stupid ideas? No. But they're addressing it. And if we don't address it, then people are going to default to her and her stupid ideas. Right? She talked about the Democrats being. Okay. She talked about Democrats being for working class people. Republicans need to show up and remind working class people that Democrats hate everything they stand for. Like if you're a working class American, I guarantee you Democrats, the Democratic Party as currently constituted, hates 90% of what you stand for. They don't want any part of it. And you don't have to take my word for it. Go and look it up. Go and look at the type of shit they say. Right? They don't like the values of the working class. They're invoking the working class now because they understand that, in some dim sense, they understand that Trump really ran the table as far as working class Americans. Working class Americans helped put Trump very much over the top in places like Michigan, which they mentioned in the clip. Okay, so again, the problem is not AOC. The problem is that if Trump in Washington is the only one who's really talking about working class friendly policies and doing anything with working class, and everyone in all these municipalities, all these states, all these so-called conservatives just kind of sitting on their hands and waiting for magic, then the problem is that people from her side of the spectrum will run the table, and that's it. So yeah, let's hear that. Let's hear that next clip.
Socialist yourself.
I mean, I think that the one thing that we know is that the Republican Party's brand is fear. And they have to constantly churn what they want people to be afraid of socialists, to be afraid of immigrants, to be afraid of women, to be afraid of, they constantly want Americans in fear of somebody. Because if you are not afraid of someone who is your neighbor, you're going to realize who's actually pickpocketing you. And that is the large corporations that are engaged in profiteering and jacking up your prices for no good reason. It's going to be in this administration that is engaged in record levels of swindling, thefts, tariffs, your housing. And so this is kind of their new thing of the day. But I think that people are feared out. I think that everyone's nerves are shot in constantly being taught and told of what country, person, community to be afraid of. And they just want a solution. They want their groceries to be more affordable. They want to figure out how we're going to get health care. They want our housing to get under control. And I think that we're ready for an affirmative vision and we're ready for an affirmative agenda.
Socialist yourself. I mean,
thoughts?
Well, okay, so here she's just kind of throwing stuff in. I mean, I always think it's interesting. I mean, this is when she talks about the Republican Party being their brand being fear. I mean, here she is definitely projecting, because of course that's exactly that is in fact the Democratic Party's brand, right? Now, to be fair, if something is a threat, right? Not necessarily a threat to your life, but perhaps a threat to your way of life, perhaps a threat to your economic well-being, perhaps a threat to public order. Well, then you should, if not afraid of it, you should at least be aware of it. And the point is we're supposed to have, if the threat is real, we're supposed to have a government that is on board with us in terms of managing that actual threat. So, for example, the immigration thing. I mean, I think she touched on this. Being afraid of immigrants. The point is not, of course, the point is not being afraid of immigrants. The point is that you have to have control over who's coming into your country. I mean, this is so obvious. If you just look at the place where AOC lives, I pretty much guarantee that place does not have open borders. I'm pretty sure that you can't just walk up in the building where AOC lives and just saunter around and maybe, hey, let me go and knock on her door. I'm pretty sure you cannot. I'm pretty sure there's a couple of challenge points right between the street and that. And look, well, there should be. But the point is that's she believes in that for herself, right? She doesn't believe in that for the rest of us, and that's a problem. The other stuff she was saying, I mean, again, this is what I mean. These people don't have very good ideas. They just know enough to engage with what's on people's mind. To talk about housing, she's like, we have to get housing under control. Well, I would argue that that's part of the problem. Like in places like New York City, right, and San Francisco, the fact is that there is so much law. There is so much government that it is actually illegal to build enough housing. I mean, there are density laws in New York that prevent you from being able to build housing according to the amount of housing that people are demanding, that there is demand for, right? And this is before we come to the question of actually owning your own. I mean, even just apartments, even just looking for a place to live, right? There is demand, right, in excess of supply. And there are laws on the books that make it very hard for people to bring new housing online, to put new housing on the market. Now, does she have a plan for that? No. What does she say? You heard her. We're going to get it under control, right? So we want to get it under control. Get housing. That is their plan for everything, is to get it under government control. The task of conservatives like you and I, one of the tasks, is to really engage with people and to show them that, well, the problem of over control, right, is one of the things that's been running our cities into the ground. And government over control is one of the things that makes it so expensive to live in cities like New York and San Francisco and so on. I just heard our least favorite Democrat chime in, so I'm going to drop and we'll come back for the last segment.
All right. Stay tuned. You're listening to The Hidden Path with Carmen Mike.
The caller has hung up.
Years ago.
I think that when I first came in, it was during the first Trump administration. And what so many people wanted was to stop the chaos and to bring us back to where we were. And I think that, that was a huge part of what unified the country in electing President Biden, is this idea of restoring the soul of America. I think we're now in a new time. And I think there is greater recognition of the brokenness that led to President Trump in the first place, which is that this growing inequality yields to authoritarianism, and that economic instability and the collapse of democracy are intertwined. And I think back then, a lot of what I was maligned for and told was extreme is now almost seen as quite common wisdom. These billionaires like Peter Thiel and Elon Musk and all of these folks that have been supercharging the corruption of this administration, dismantling the very foundations of democracy, have proven that you cannot have extreme levels of income inequality and a functioning, thriving democracy at once. We have to choose. And the good news in that is that making the lives of working class.
We are back. Sorry. We are back, everyone. We're talking AOC, everyone's favorite U.S. House of Representative out of the state of New York. I was playing another clip during the break of something she said about democracy and how the Republicans are failing us on that. I'm gonna replay it just so you can hear it.
Yeah.
Sure.
Go
ahead. Here she is again.
I think that when I first came in, it was during the first Trump administration. And what so many people wanted was to stop the chaos and to bring us back to where we were. And I think that, that was a huge part of what unified the country in electing President Biden, is this idea of restoring the soul of America. I think we're now in a new time. And I think there is greater recognition of the brokenness that led to President Trump in the first place, which is that this growing inequality yields to authoritarianism, and that economic instability and the collapse of democracy are intertwined. And I think back then, a lot of what I was maligned for and told was extreme is now almost seen as quite common wisdom. These billionaires like Peter Thiel and Elon Musk and all of these folks that have been supercharging the corruption of this administration, dismantling the very foundations of democracy, have proven that you cannot have extreme levels of income inequality and a functioning, thriving democracy at once. We have to choose. And the good news in that is that making the lives of working class Americans better means that our democracy gets stronger. And I think that is what our focus needs to be. But I do think that that will require a choice in a system that is controlled by big money and dominated by large donors. I think that many people will have to make a difficult decision to walk away from and limit and rein in the excesses of a campaign finance system that wants to purchase Congress years ago. I think.
What's your thoughts there? You there, Dusty? Why can't I hear you? Give us a second, everybody.
Check 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Carbon mic check 1, 2, 3. There we go.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I
So
lost you for a second.
So what do I think? That's all right. So what do I think about that? Well, look, I'll give her credit. It is true that deeply corrupt governments, right, are incompatible with kind of proper representation, right, with democratic representation. But of course, she leaves out. She leaves out a bunch. I mean, she's saying, the things people malign her for have come to be common wisdom. Well, I don't really think so. I mean, people maligned her, as I recall, when she came on the political scene. People maligned her for being stupid. And she's still kind of stupid. Right? I mean, she doesn't really, I mean, here's part of the problem. Part of the problem is that people like AOC, how can I put this? It's worse than having to argue against someone with a bad philosophy. Her philosophy is so incoherent that it's not even wrong. It's just a mess. Okay, so for example, the problem is, she mentioned Elon Musk, who I was never a fan of, and Peter Thiel, who I don't know very much about, except they bet a lot of money. Okay, now, and then she mentioned income inequality. So this is the thing. We've allowed progressives like AOC to kind of bandy this word about without any real kind of pushback from our side. So then now it's just a thing. They'll talk about income inequality. You can hear people in the news media talk about income inequality. Well, but hang on a second. If people on the lower end of the economic spectrum are still making a good living, right, and they can afford to raise their families in peace and dignity and relative prosperity, then it doesn't matter how many billionaires you have, right? In other words, if you also have a lot of billionaires, right, well, then there's still income inequality, right? Your income as a welder or a pipe fitter or a carpenter or what have you is not equal to the income of a Peter Thiel. But the fact is, if the free family is something we care about and something we uphold, then we don't have to worry about trying to equalize their income with the income of a Peter Thiel or equalizing his income with theirs. That's simply not an issue. In other words, the point is, right, the dignity and the liberty and the prosperity, all three of which are intertwined, of the free family. That is the question. The question is not the number on, like, well, how much money comes into their household every year and how much money comes into Peter Thiel's household every year. And if we allow people like AOC to distract us with this, silly talk of income inequality, then we miss what's actually going on, which is that too much government is in fact driving down the prosperity and the prospects of individuals and families all across this country. Right? Now, saying that is not enough. Conservatives have to really engage with that and really have a plan for how you as a citizen, right? How we're going to make it easier for you as a citizen to turn your assets and your skill sets into prosperity. See, prosperity does not mean that I make as much money as Peter Thiel. That's the thing. When I was outside, I was before these Democrats who were so obsessed with income inequality, right? Before they basically, ruined my life and deprived me of much of my savings and what have you, because of their paperwork bullshit, right? Before they did that, I lived a pretty prosperous life. I made nowhere near the amount of money Peter Thiel makes in a year. Not even close, right? But I lived a prosperous life. I could look out for my daughter. I could take care of my obligations, my people, my family, so on and so forth. Right? So inequality is this term that they've cottoned on to. They like that term. They like the sound of it. The inequality. And again, the problem is not AOC and the dumb ideas. The problem is that conservatives are not attacking those ideas where they are weak, and those ideas are radically weak. And if you talk to working class families that are doing well in this country, they're not obsessed with the idea that there's someone in somewhere else, someone in Peter Thiel land who's making more money than they are. That's not their problem. That's not their problem. Think about it. You're like when is the last time you sat and said, "Oh my God, my life is horrible because I'm not making as much money as Peter Thiel"? No. The question is, can you be prosperous? Can you be well off? By your own labor, by your own efforts. Can you turn your assets and skill sets into prosperity? And Democrats are terrible at setting the conditions for average Americans to turn their assets and skill sets into prosperity. They are terrible at this. And we don't have to look very far to see the evidence of it. What we do have to look very far to find is, where conservative politicians' balls are. That is what is not in evidence, right? If conservative politicians have balls, we have yet to find them, because they have yet to find their balls and to get out there and actually engage these dumb ideas and turn around and engage citizens in a way that actually makes sense day to day. And it's not hard to do. It just takes imagination and a little bit of political will. That's it. That's it. So again, she's not the problem. The problem is our limp-wristed response to idiotic ideas like hers.
I'm gonna play you a clip from her thoughts on healthcare.
Oh God.
My position has always been clear that ICE funding should be cut. We're seeing what they're doing with this reckless explosion in funding. And mind you, just so everybody knows, I want everybody to understand the cuts to your health care are what's paying for this. All that extra money that everybody's paying right now in their premiums, all that extra money that you're paying, it is paid for it is all of that extra money that the government and the ACA subsidies that was given to nearly $1 trillion in healthcare was taken out and given to ICE. So understand how these dots connect. You get screwed over to pay a bunch of thugs in the street that are shooting mothers in the face. That is what this administration's doing. That's what the Republican Party did.
Your thoughts?
Okay, that's just beyond stupid. I mean, first of all, I don't think she. It's interesting that she works in Congress and does not understand how appropriations work. Right? Like, and here's what's funny. Here's what's really funny about AOC. I remember, I used to be, as you know, Carl, I used to be on the left. And when I was a young, dumb lefty, I used to say a lot of stuff like, well, they used to take the money that they spend on this and spend it on that. Because, not having done my homework, I thought that government money was just this big kind of, it's just this big box full of cash, right? And you can just take this money and put it over there and take this money. It's all fungible. That is not the way congressional appropriations work. And she should know this because she works in Congress, right? The way it works is that every year, right, Congress signs, Congress passes and the president signs a singular law. It's a law that is in effect for essentially 1 year or thereabouts. And it's called a budget. Right? It's a law. It has to go, it does all the same things that, right? It has to go through Congress. Both houses have to approve it, and the president signs it, and that becomes law. Okay. And in that law, you have appropriations. And when the nation passes a budget, it's not like there's just a bunch of money and then you can take some out and give it to ICE and take some out and subsidize healthcare. No. Each expenditure is a separate appropriation. Right? And so it says, okay, the Pentagon budget this year is going to be this, right? And so there's no such thing as we'll take the money that we were going to spend on the Pentagon this year and spend it on something else. It doesn't work like that. Right? It's like, because yes, you don't have to spend all the money that was appropriated, but you cannot spend money that was appropriated on something else. that money has to be then reappropriated. That's how Congress works. That's how spending works, right? They say, here, you can spend this much money on this thing. That's an appropriation. And again, she should know this. She should know this. It's extraordinary. So she's saying that, like, they literally, they took away a healthcare subsidy and then they just, like, drop that money in a different box. No. Right? Someone would have had to reappropriate money that was in the budget and say, okay, now we're gonna specifically write this check for this thing. Okay? So now, the question of healthcare, that's a different matter. I mean, I think that of course healthcare is a huge problem. I mean, we could do a whole show just on the out of control prices of healthcare, cost of healthcare. I mean, the extent to which we're actually doing. Pardon me. What did you say?
I said that affects me personally.
That affects you personally, right? Yeah, it's a huge problem. I'm not going to get into that. I'm just going to say that that what is interesting about what she said is she mentioned ICE, of course, because that's a hot button topic for them, and really because the Democratic Party has been in a panic since the beginning of Trump 2.0 because the immigration crackdown has put a huge kink in their plans. Right. In other words, the idea was to create another dependent class in the United States. Right, since more and more Black folks are walking away from the Democrats. And the idea was to create a dependent class and to kind of stuff these municipalities with enough people so that in the next census, you can say we have this many more people, we need this much more representation, right, in Congress. And then, whatever electoral shenanigans you can do in the in-between time, of course, that would be gravy for them. And this immigration crackdown basically blew all those plans sky high. And that is why, of course, Democrats panicked they're almost panicking in lockstep because of that. Now, it's interesting to me that she sees no connection between the pressure on infrastructure, including healthcare infrastructure, that you get when you import huge numbers of people into these municipalities and you have to take care of them. Like she doesn't see, maybe she sees it, but if she's certainly not going to talk about it, right? I mean, the fact is, right, that if the emergency room has to just see 2, 3, 4, 5 times as many people per unit time, then that's pressure on infrastructure and something has to give. Now, does this mean that no one should ever come to the United States? Of course not. That's ridiculous. But what she is in favor of and what the Democratic Party has been in favor of, and to some extent the Republicans before Trump, has been just, you're going to let people drift into the country and just, set up shop. And what I'm saying and what many of us are saying is we simply can't have that. No, you can't just have people roll into your country and then take advantage of quote unquote public benefits, because that money comes from somewhere, and the infrastructure required to deliver services to whoever, that infrastructure has limits. And if you stress the infrastructure past the limits and the infrastructure collapses, and that's the end of your ability to help anybody. But she is thinking about this literally like she's still in high school, and no one's bothered to tell her how appropriations work. No one's bothered to tell her that infrastructure actually has limits, and you can support a population of so much with a given number of clinics and a given number of hospitals, a given number of service providers, and a given number of police, and so on and so forth. Like, it seems like she is, oblivious to all this, and again, the good news is that a lot of people around the country are very much hip to this. We talked earlier in the show about Black folks in Chicago, working class Black folks in Chicago, who are spitting mad at Brandon Johnson They get it. They get it. You know, think about that. I mean, you talk about I'm not worried about AOC. I mean, imagine playing that clip from AOC in front of the same black folks who show up to Brandon Johnson's press conferences and eat him alive. Imagine showing that clip to them. What do you think they're going to do? Cheer for it? No. They're going to be like, oh, she's one of him. Right? So again, what's the problem? She's not the problem. The problem is the inability or the unwillingness, or both, of the conservative movement to exploit these weaknesses. Shit, if I was outside and I had a limited cast, that's what I'd be trying. I would be taking AOC clips and playing them for black folks in Chicago. You have to be like, this is how we're going to flip Chicago red. Look at this. Look at this. See, you think Brandon Johnson is your particular problem, but this problem is nationwide. That's how I would start to activate people around the country. I'd be like, oh, yeah, this thing that you hate. Yeah, look. Same thing, New York. Right? Oh, look. Same thing, Wisconsin. Oh, look, here, right? It's like, yeah. You know? So yeah, this is she is very stupid. I can't believe, you know, the other stuff. Okay, her ideas about policy are bad. Fair enough. I mean, the idea that she doesn't know how appropriations work. Like she thinks you know, Trump just took the money out of the healthcare subsidies box and dropped it in the ICE funding box. That's insane. And she's a sitting congresswoman. That's nuts. But it is what it is. So
all I gotta say is AOC is wild. She has this idealistic purview of how things should work, and not how, and it's not based in reality. That's not how things work in this country.
Yeah, well, look, I think it's worse than that. In fact, I wouldn't actually knock her for being idealistic. I'm idealistic. I would argue that you can't get anything good done unless you have ideals. But the problem is not that she's idealistic. The problem is that she's stupid, which is different. In other words, if you're idealistic, if you say, well, these are my ideals, and then you say, okay, given how things work, I have a plan for doing this and that and that. Then okay, yeah, that's right. And again, that's how things get done in the world. You know, I have an idea for a skyscraper, and you have an idea of a blueprint. And of course, if you know about buildings, anything else is built to blueprints. You know that when the thing is built, it doesn't always necessarily conform exactly to the original blueprint. There's modifications, there's additions, there's subtractions. Okay, so yeah, but you have an ideal. But see, along with the idea, you have to have some basic understanding of how the world works. Like you have to know what an I-beam is and what it can do. And see, the real thing is, if you want to build a sky, it's like her thing is not being idealistic. It's like her thing is, I want to build a skyscraper and I want every floor to be a trampoline. That's her problem. And it's like, okay, you don't understand structures, right? Which is very different from merely having ideals. And that's what I mean.
So what I mean by that is I agree with you. You should be optimistic. You should be a person who think of good ideas. I mean about what you're doing. You should be a person who thinks of good ideas and, bring those good ideas to light. I get what you're saying. Her ideas are bad. She's stupid. That's what I meant by being. Her ideas, in my opinion, is more. I want to do everything, and I don't want to listen to those who are trying to set me on the right path. I just want to do whatever I see is for the good of the people.
What sounds good?
Yes. I got another thing I want to play for you before we get down into it. So You're a native New Yorker.
Mhm.
Your family is there. Your friends are there. This is what AOC is saying about New York right now.
Ari Jackson is one of 3 million New Yorkers depending on the federal government to help pay for groceries.
Food stamps is really serious. They mean a lot to a lot of people, especially me, because I'm disabled.
Dorothy Lotta organizes the Plattsburgh Interfaith Food Pantry. She says SNAP benefits ending sprung people into action.
I'm actually one of the individuals who rely on food stamps.
SNAP is so effective and important as an anti-hunger support. It gets those food resources right to families.
Nonprofits and food banks are here to fill in the gaps where government falls short. And this is more than short. This is devastating.
About 2.8 million Empire State residents rely on SNAP benefits.
Each month, she gets $358 in food stamps to feed a family of 4.
No matter how people look at you, just keep your head up.
We're an anti-hunger organization. Our mission is to support food security for all New Yorkers, and this bill does just the opposite. It includes the largest cut to SNAP in American history.
She says if she didn't have food assistance, she'd have to get another job just so her family could live paycheck to paycheck. And like many SNAP recipients across America right now, that thought is top of mind.
In January and February, we saw about 300 more households and about 700 more people than we saw last year.
About 1.9 million New Yorkers said they often or sometimes didn't have enough to eat this year.
And so when more people have fewer dollars through SNAP, that's going to increase the demand on Feed More and all of our partner agencies.
She said that people like her come here to work hard, and now she's not able to receive some of these benefits. The president stops everything and cuts it off.
Plattsburgh Interfaith Food Pantry and Salvation Army say they'll be there for the community and make it work.
We're very grateful for what the community does for us because they help us help those that are in need.
So this was posted on AOC's official YouTube page.
Okay. Now this is.
Go ahead.
Well, was this one? This is about the thing with Donald Trump, kind of like insisting that the states pay more for SNAP, and the federal government's going to pull back its funding.
Yeah, I believe so.
Yeah. Right.
17. Ari Jackson is one of 3.
Say it again.
Yeah, so we don't have much. So we don't have much time. I'll just say that a state like New York. I mean, here's the thing. This is where, again, conservatives can really step up and start to run the numbers. The question is, why does a state like New York, right, have to go to the federal government hand in hand to pay for local food programs? That is, why does New York State, why does New York City need to depend on the rest of the country, right, to help feed New Yorkers when New York State should be a very, very wealthy state? It's got farmland, it's got finance, it's got high tech, it's got tourism, it's got culture, it's got theater, it's got travel, it's got, you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So the AOCs of the world will never say that that New York can be more productive and pay its way, and we can help our own. We don't need the federal government to help our people. But the idea that it's the federal government's job to go into each state and quote unquote help the people there has become so ingrained. That wasn't the original plan at all, right? But it's become so ingrained that now it's taken as this terrible thing when the federal government says, "Hey, listen, you're New York State, you pay for your thing." And if that means that you're gonna become a sanctuary state and welcome a bunch of immigrants, then you'll have to feed that population with the money you have. And if you fall short, you fall short. Right? I mean, that's it sounds cold, but I mean, that's
You have 1 minute
that's
left.
what you're doing anyway. That's if you're letting people into the country like that, then at some point the country itself will face that same problem. We've imported more people for a small amount of time than our infrastructure and our services and the amount of money we have to hand can handle. So yeah, bro, it's after 11. I can't call back, but man, it's good to be back on the hidden path with my brother Carl. And I can't wait for next week's hit.
All right. And now that I figured out this picture-in-picture thing and the audio thing, we should have a more structured show. So stay tuned. We're going to be talking about John Thune next episode. So if you guys are looking forward to that, tune in next week at 7 p.m. or 8 p.m. We'll send out a link and let everybody know.
Thank you for using Securus.
Available.
Goodbye.
When we're starting the show. More than likely, it'll be at 8 p.m. We're going to change the time, push it back to 8 p.m. while we get our show notes and everything ready for you guys. But yeah, I figured out the picture-in-picture. So like you guys are seeing now, you know, my YouTube. You should be able to see it on your screens. So I'll be able to pull clips from here and, you know, clips from websites and things like that. So I want to thank you guys for joining us. You was listening to The Hidden Path, and I'm going to let the intro play us out like a
hoe.
Yeah, so let me go ahead and turn them off.